Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Thursday, July the 25th, 2024. Today I want to talk about Elon Musk. So Elon Musk, well, he's always in the news, isn't he? But he's getting a lot of attention at the moment because of an interview he did with Jordan Peterson. And a lot of YouTube channels have been looking at this video and they've been commenting on it based on their political viewpoints. And in this interview, Elon Musk was basically saying that one of his sons was dead. Now, that doesn't mean literally dead, but he was referring to his son Xavier Musk, who used to be called Xavier Musk, who applied to change gender, who has changed gender, and I believe has been taking whatever hormone blocking drugs. I don't quite know what's happening there, but he made this application on April the 18th, 2022, which is when he turned 18. And he turned 18, I think, on April the 15th, 2022, which was a Friday. And he started making this application a few days later on the Monday, which was April the 18th, 2022. So Musk took the view that his son was dead, and Xavier Musk didn't just apply to change his gender, but also, I think, changed his name. So he changed his name to Vivian Jenna Wilson. So not wanting anything to do with his father. And Musk blames the woke mind virus for this. And he is committing, or perhaps dedicating himself to fighting the woke mind virus. And I think this is one of the reasons why Musk has started donating to the Trump campaign. I mean, he says he used to be a Democrat and has now changed, is now supportive of the Trump campaign. And yeah, he regards it as something that absolutely needs to be opposed. That he is saying, I think he has vowed to destroy the woke mind virus. And this could be his response to what happened to his son, who is of course no longer his son, and so it's theoretically, legally, is now his daughter. But the Musk name, Xavier Musk, doesn't call himself Xavier Musk anymore. So this is something I want to look at in this video. I want to look at Musk's horoscope. I also want to look at Jordan Peterson's horoscope briefly. I mean, Jordan Peterson is a sort of public intellectual. I think I've been asked to look at his chart before. I'm not going to spend a great deal of time looking at Jordan Peterson's chart because this video is fundamentally about Elon Musk. And Elon Musk, not just from a perspective of Elon Musk being someone who is very rich, but what has happened? Why is this such a drama? Why is this such a key point for him? And I think recently Musk has made a decision that he's moving all his companies out of California. And I think the reason for this is that there's some new legislation in California which means that schools are not allowed to tell parents when their children are contemplating making a gender switch, if I've got that right. Correct me if I'm wrong. So yes, so in this video I will be talking about Elon Musk and considering what might have been going on in his life recently, and perhaps why the events in 2022 might have been so traumatic and might in some respects have been a turning point for him. But before I look at Elon Musk, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Thursday, July the 5th, 2024. So there's Elon Musk up there, and there is Jordan Peterson. By the way, if you're not subscribed to this channel, I would be very grateful if you were to subscribe. I don't think it costs you anything. And if you like this video, yeah, I'd be super grateful if you were to indicate that you like this video. It really does help. So the moon is changing sign. It's changing sign from Pisces into Aries. So you can see that at noon in New York, the moon was at pretty much 0 degrees Aries. And in fact, the moon changes sign from Pisces into Aries at 15:52 London time. That's just before 4 o'clock in the afternoon in London. So that would be just before 11 a.m. in New York, which would be just before 8 a.m. on the West Coast in California, for example, and even earlier in Alaska and Hawaii. So if you're in the Americas, it's an Aries day by and large. Moon moves into Aries over the course of the morning. If you're in Europe, it's sort of mainly a Pisces day, still a bit of a moon in Pisces day, but afternoon, evening, you start to experience the moon being in Aries. If you're further east, Asia, certainly Australia, New Zealand, Philippines, Vladivostok, Japan, then it's a moon in Pisces. It's a moon in Pisces day. The moon doesn't go into Aries until tomorrow. So looking at the main aspects today, the moon is making a conjunction to Neptune. I think that this could be important. I mean, it's not a major aspect, but with the moon conjunct Neptune, there is increased sensitivity, and it is in Pisces. It's in a water sign, so we're going to feel sensitive. We're perhaps going to be able to tune into what's going on in the outside world from a sort of an emotional perspective. And we could be sort of more spiritual than usual, but we could also be more impressionable than usual. We see something, it seems important, and we act on it. And we don't quite know what we're doing, but it just seems like a good thing to do at the time. And the concept of impressionability and not being able perhaps to always think straight is further indicated by the fact that Mercury is quincunx Neptune. So Mercury is 150 degrees from Neptune. So Mercury is about the conscious mind. And it's how we're thinking, it's how we're communicating. But quincunx Neptune, there's something that we don't understand. There's something that was confusing. And if we just say the first thing on our mind, and if we just allow our thoughts to whirl around, then we might start to really get confused. Now, this quincunx is not a completely bad aspect. Overall, quincunx is not a particularly good aspect. But the challenge here with Mercury quincunx Neptune is to incorporate Neptune into our thought processes. We need to incorporate a level of confusion and emotionality into the way we are thinking and communicating. And Mercury is a fixed sign, and it can be just too fixed. Mercury is right at the end of Leo. It's actually about to move into Virgo very soon. So Mercury right at the end of Leo is quite fixed, focused on what's in front of it, but there's something going on that Mercury just is not noticing. And so when we're making decisions and when we're communicating, we just have to make an extra effort to be flexible and not to be too rigid. We've got to take into account of something unexpected and perhaps unusual which we need to integrate into our thought processes. And it may be the spiritual dimension, it could be the emotional dimension. So the moon, once it goes into Aries, it makes a number of aspects. It makes a sextile to Pluto, it makes a trine to the Sun, and it makes a sextile to the Mars. So it makes quite a lot of dynamic aspects as it goes through Aries. Now, those dynamic aspects are going to be especially important if you're in the Americas. If you're in Asia, you may not really feel them today, but if you're in Europe, it's perhaps more going to be about this evening. So it's one of those kind of annoying days today when the interpretation of what happens does kind of depend on your time zone. And I think that the experience of today could be very different. For example, if you're say you're in New York compared to someone in, say, Sydney, Australia, I think it's going to be very different days. So that's annoying. It's one of those days when you kind of feel like I'd like to do two recordings, one for Australia and one for the Americas, but that's just not practical, is it? Now, late in the day, London time, just before midnight, Mercury moves into Virgo. So Mercury's moving into Virgo is different. It is fortunate. Mercury is moving into its own sign. And I think we should certainly welcome Mercury moving into Virgo. Okay, if you're in the Americas, then this afternoon, Mercury moves into Virgo. If you're east of Europe, or even if you're just on continental Europe, then Mercury moves into Virgo tomorrow. But one way or another, we can either start to experience Mercury moving into Virgo, or we can start getting ready for Mercury moving into Virgo. I think in terms of looking at Mercury and Virgo, I'll probably give it more coverage tomorrow, because tomorrow, Friday, everyone will be able to experience Mercury and Virgo. But today it's more an event for one group of people, those people who live in the Americas. And that is the broad astrological picture. I'm not saying that it's especially dramatic. And we now turn to the heliocentric solar system. So here is the solar system from a perspective of the sun, putting the sun in the middle of things. There's not a huge amount happening here. We can see that Venus is still square Jupiter. It's widely square Mercury. I suppose we can say that Venus is on the Mercury-Jupiter midpoint heliocentrically, sort of. So with Mercury on the Mercury-Jupiter midpoint, I would have said that is quite fortunate. It possibly allows us to express ourselves, to talk about what's on our mind. We do have a certain sense of optimism still. It's still there. We can be optimistic about what is happening, and we want to see the best in things, and we really want to have people, ideally, who are going to be supportive and optimistic. We don't want negative thoughts, and I think that could be a theme today. We don't want too much negativity with Mercury with Venus on the Mercury-Jupiter midpoint. But heliocentrically, overall, I would not have said that a great deal is happening, so I don't really want to put too much emphasis on that. Okay, so that's a heliocentric picture, not really much to report, and I now want to look at today from the perspective of the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Thursday, July the 25th, 2024. Aries. The moon is starting to creep into your sign. Does kind of depend where you are in terms of when this happens. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, you're probably not going to feel the moon moving into your sign until tomorrow, but it's still happening. It's about to happen. And this is a time when, if you're an Aries, you might be feeling that you can get your power back. The last couple of days, you might not have quite been yourself. You perhaps wanted to engage with the world, but it just didn't seem possible. It just didn't feel right. And you just weren't ready. And indeed, you might at some level still not be ready. I think part of the problem at the moment is that you're being somewhat reserved. There is something you're keeping back. And giving another person everything, your all, emotionally, could be hard work. And you might try very hard, but still it just feels that you're not fully able to express yourself. So that might be an issue, wherever you are. So I would have said, Aries, don't get too caught up on close relationships over the course of the day, particularly relationships which have an emotional content. If a relationship is practical and is related to achieving particular goals, well, that should be okay. But emotionally, I don't think you're quite in the mood for sort of sharing and caring. So, doesn't take away from the fact that the moon is moving into Aries. The moon is starting to make a trine to the sun. So you can feel that things are very much getting better. And you also are able to benefit from the fact that the sun is sextile Mars. I mean, that aspect, sun sextile Mars, is exact. I didn't actually mention the sun sextile Mars in my introduction. I should have done. So, as the sun is sextile Mars, regardless of whether the moon is in Pisces or Aries, you have a lot of power at your disposal. We've got these two strong masculine planets making a fortunate aspect to each other, and you are going to want to do things. And I think that you're going to want to do things that are a fundamental part of who you are. It's not a time for compromising. It's not a time for doing things another person's way. No, it's a time for doing things your way. Now, quite how you go about it might depend on the time zone. I think that if you're in the Americas, you're going to be very clear about who you are, what you want, how you want to be creative, and you'll be quite happy to involve other people with what you're doing. If you're in other parts of the world, you might be more reticent. You might be very much focused on your creativity, but you might feel that it needs to be hidden a bit because you're not quite ready to reveal to the world what you're thinking and feeling. So overall, Aries, it is a powerful day, and regardless of whether the moon is in Pisces or Aries, simply because of this sun sextile Mars. And with this sun sextile Mars, you have a real capacity to tell people what's on your mind. You can say it straight. Now, what you say may not always get a good reception. I don't think that you're as sensitive as you could be, and I think you can be a little bit abrasive, and you may give insufficient attention to human sensitivities, but does it matter? You want to do things your way, you've got a clear idea about how it should be done, and perhaps that's enough. So Overall, Aries, it seems to be a fairly productive day, a day when I think that you're quite headstrong. And in terms of how you relate to other people, it's not going to be 100% easy because you're not really in the mood for caring and sharing. You are thinking about yourself, and human emotions just seem a little bit of a pain. You don't want to try too hard to make people happy, try too hard not to hurt people's feelings. But how much you reveal does depend on where you are. I think if you're in the Americas, you're much more of an extrovert than you are, for example, if you are in Australia or New Zealand. Now, when I say extrovert, I'm not talking about extrovert as a personality trait. I'm talking about it more about how you're responding to what's going on. And I mean, a point about, by the way, when we talk about extroverts and introverts, I know it's often said that there are certain extroverted signs and introverted signs, but I'm sure that if you were to do a psychological test, like the Myers-Briggs test or something like that, testing extroversion or introversion, there would be no correlation between your sign, particularly your sun sign, but other signs as well, maybe your ascendant sign or your moon sign, and how much of an extrovert or an introvert you actually are. You can have an introverted Aries and you can have an extroverted Aries. That's the way it is. Taurus, you are quite serious at the moment, Taurus. There are things you want to happen, and you seem a little bit impatient. If things aren't moving your way, then Taurus, it seems that you're going to want to push things. And in the first instance, you don't seem to be particularly bothered about how much damage you cause. Now, I'm not saying you're going to cause damage, but I think it is a possibility because you are so determined, because you are so focused on yourself and issues of power. If you can't get what you want, you might think that there's something wrong. You're not going to wait until tomorrow to get what you want or until next week. You want to get it done now. And Taurus, you are certainly capable of bringing to bear enormous amounts of power. And I suppose, Taurus, you will get what you want in most cases, but you have to ask yourself whether it's really worth it. I mean, is it worth the stress that you might cause if you insist on getting your way? And, in many cases, it just might not be worth it. And unless it's really urgent, Taurus, I would suggest perhaps that you do hold back and also accept the times in which you're living. And, it is a time at the moment when people are not particularly sure of themselves. You want things to be definite. You want definite answers. You want yes. You want to hear a yes and you want to hear a no. And that's where you're at the moment. But you may not get what you want. You may get confusion. You may get people saying things which are not clear. And you might respond to this by just hearing what you want to hear. Now, so that's a possibility here. You might ask someone a question or try to get someone's opinion on something. They sound a little bit indecisive, but you won't hear the indecision. You'll just hear what you want to hear. And as a result, you might make an assumption. And as a result of an assumption, you could do what you feel is the right thing to do. And in the process, you could cause a lot of upset and confusion because you have just fundamentally misunderstood what's going on. Which is a reason, perhaps, Taurus, why you should consider just holding back for a bit. It's Thursday. Are you in that much of a hurry? Maybe you can wait until the weekend. Maybe you can wait until Monday. Is it so important? But if anyone is messing you around, if anyone is taking you for granted, Taurus, there's no doubt that you will be able to look after yourself. You'll be able to assert yourself with full power. So you're certainly not in a weak position. And people do need to take you seriously. Taurians can be underestimated. They can seem passive, maybe a little bit docile, just doing their own thing, not causing any problems. But when they do get annoyed, when they feel that they're being taken for granted, they can go ballistic. And you do have the capacity to go ballistic today. But I'm hoping you won't have to go ballistic. It shouldn't be necessary. And I suppose it might be a good idea, Taurus, to indicate what you want all the way through the day. Indicate who you are and what you want and what your boundaries are. Be clear about it. Because in that way, it's less likely that you're going to get yourself involved in some sort of conflict or power struggle. Gemini, you seem to be a bit hasty at the moment. You seem to be actually in a little bit of a hurry. There are things that you want, and you want them now. It's similar to what I was saying for Taurus, but perhaps somewhat different in the sense that I think that Geminis can take things to a point of actually being a little bit accident prone. And I'm a Gemini, remember. You want things done and you feel that you want them done now and you're just not prepared to wait. And waiting might be a good idea. You can wait just a couple of days. That might be all it takes. But if you try to get everything done right now, and particularly if you're involving yourself in objects, machinery, cars, that kind of thing, and you're in a hurry, for example, to get something repaired, and you want something to work, and you're impatient, then that could be a problem. Then you could have an accident. I'm not saying you will have an accident, and if there is an accident, it's more likely to be about perhaps breaking something because you're in a hurry, you're not patient, you perhaps don't want to read the instructions. So if you've got some appliance or something electronic and you're gonna be in a hurry to get it to do whatever it needs to do, but perhaps you need to take the time to just read the instruction manual. Check it out on the internet, see if you can find some information about it. So that might save you. You might in that way be saving yourself a lot of grief. So do try very hard to be a little restrained here. Now, as far as the way you project yourself out there, outside world, especially in terms of your work, if you happen to be working today, then there is a possibility that you get a little bit confused. You might think you understand what's going on, but you might not. You might see signals and interpret signals, and you think, yeah, you understand what's going on. This is the way what you're supposed to do, and you might have just got it completely wrong. So, Gemini, don't make assumptions about the world based on your perceptions and the current state of your knowledge. Yeah, sure, you're a Gemini, you know a lot, but you don't know everything. And matters are not helped by the fact that Mercury, which is of course your ruler, is making a quincunx to Neptune. Mercury's 150 degrees from Neptune. Neptune is the planet of confusion. Mercury is you, it's your planet. When it's quincunx Neptune, there are things that just can't be understood straight away. You're going to try to understand them straight away. Indeed, new information will be seen by Gemini in a way that best fits in with its pre-existing view of the world. But actually, new information is a challenge. Particularly information that comes in on an emotional level, things you can pick up on. You are quite sensitive today, more sensitive actually than you give yourself credit for. You might think you're not sensitive, but you're just able to just plow through the day. And if you have feelings about anything, they can perhaps be discarded. But no, you are picking up on stuff, and you need to recognize that you're picking up on stuff. And on the basis of what you're picking up on, you should not jump to conclusions, because Neptune could potentially trip you up. Now, Mercury is your ruler, and Mercury's position is interesting. It's on the verge of changing sign. Mercury is also now very, very close to the fixed star Regulus. It's pretty much exactly on the fixed star Regulus. So that position of Mercury on the fixed star Regulus is good. It's good news. Regulus is the royal star. It's about you being special, you being recognized as someone special, and at the same time perhaps being able to interact with important people. So it is a day when you can improve your position, leverage your position, and get noticed. And that is good. But, when you are noticed, as I've already suggested, that doesn't mean that you've got all the answers. You just have to understand your own flaws, I suppose. Your judgment can be faulty. I think in some respects today, actually, your judgment is faulty. It's not faulty in all areas, but your judgment is not 100%. So don't give the impression to other people that you know everything. Don't give the impression that your expertise is total. Yeah, you might be an expert in certain areas. I'm sure you probably are. But even in terms of areas where you do have expertise, you haven't got all the answers. And so, Gemini, I think it's just really important today that you have, shall I say, a little bit of humility. Because I think for a Gemini, humility, a little bit of humility does go a long way. Cancer. The moon is very important when looking at the Cancerian horoscope, obviously because the moon rules Cancer. But today is a day when the moon's sign position really does depend on where you are, as I was explaining in the introduction. And I know some people looking at this video kind of get a little bit annoyed about my concern with time zones. And I think my concern with time zones simply reflects the reality of what I'm doing. Years ago when I was an astrologer, when I had some contract work for a cell phone company in the UK, it was all okay because I could talk about everything from a perspective of a single time zone, the UK time zone. That was fine. But now I'm on all time zones. And what's happening in Australia today is different from what's happening in the United States. And that's the reality. And I just can't do 2 videos or even 3 videos, which would be very nice. A video for each region. So bear with me, when I say that if you are in Australia or New Zealand, then the moon is very much in late Pisces all day. If you're in the Americas, then the moon is going to be in Aries for most of the day. And there's a huge difference between Aries and Pisces. Aries and Pisces are very different signs. So if you're in Australia or New Zealand, or if you're in East Asia, then I would have said that the operative aspect is going to be I would have said is going to be a conjunction between the moon and Neptune in Pisces. And so you have to be aware of that. It's a time of great sensitivity when you're going to be picking up on a great deal. But I don't mean sensitivity in a bad sense. No, because that moon conjunct Neptune does relate to quite high level forces which may be of a sort of spiritual or cosmic nature, and you're able to pick up on it all. And at the same time, don't make a decision on what you're feeling. That applies, by the way, not just for Australia or New Zealand, but it does apply to the rest of the world, but very much earlier in the day. In the Americas, it really is early in the day. So you have to be a bit flexible in terms of understanding the way these time zones are working. Now, if you are in the Americas, then for most of the day, the moon is going to be in Aries. And that is a big deal if you're a Cancerian. Moon in Aries is very dynamic. The moon is starting to make a conjunction to the North Node. The moon is making a trine to the sun. So if you're in the Americas, there are things that have to be done, especially from lunchtime onwards. You are assertive. You have almost an obligation to make your presence felt. And it may be a situation where you have to show some leadership. I've talked about leadership quite a lot when talking about Cancerians at the moment, and that is because the North Node is in Aries, and it stays in Aries. It's been in Aries for a long time. It will stay in Aries for a long time. So if you're a Cancerian, regardless of where you are, being able and ready to adopt a leadership position is important, because you have something to offer that other people don't, and without your presence, without your guidance, people could be running around in circles. And with the moon in Aries making a trine to the sun in Leo, this is a very useful aspect. Sun, moon, trine in fire signs. And because of this sun, moon, trine in fire signs, you're able to actually make people feel good about themselves. And I think you yourself, you're going to feel good about yourself, and you're going to be confident about making the right decision. Now, that confidence increases as the day progresses. It increases as you move west. People in the United States are going to be more confident today than Cancerians in the United States are going to be more confident, all things being equal, than Cancerians in Australia or New Zealand. In Australia or New Zealand, there's still a few things to work through. In the Americas, it's becoming very definite. And so, Cancer, if you're an American, certainly if you're in America, do take advantage of the fact that the moon is making a trine to the sun in Leo. And one area that you might feel a certain confidence about is money. Just a feeling that you know what's going on. And even if your financial situation is not perfect, you're going to have a great sense of what you actually need to do. And this also applies if you're working. The financial element in terms of business and career is going to be clear to you. You'll understand what's a waste of money. You'll understand where the money is. And you'll be able to handle money quite well. And I think your ability to handle money well will be very much appreciated. I'm particularly talking here about those of you in America. I think must emphasize that in Australia it is a little bit up in the air, because in Australia and New Zealand and Eastern Asia we do still have this moon conjunct Neptune, which just could be a little bit confusing. So I'm sorry, Cancer, to be a bit vague and to be sort of flipping between different time zones. But, this may just be the nature of the Cancerian experience. Cancer's ruler is the moon. The moon is more sensitive to what is going on. It's more sensitive to the here and now, to the immediate environment as it changes. But it doesn't matter. Tomorrow, the moon will be in Aries completely. And I think that wherever you are, Cancer, tomorrow is going to be far more definite than today is. And so I think that things are certainly going to get better. I think they're pretty good today, but I think they're going to be even better tomorrow. Leo. Well, I think you're starting to enjoy the sun being in your sign. The sun is now at 3 degrees Leo, so it's been in your sign for a few days. So I think you're just getting used to the fact that there has been a changeover. The sun is now separating from an opposition to Pluto. So I think some of the drama of that sun opposition Pluto is starting to dissipate. I think you still are aware that life is a little bit of a power struggle and that you have to make sure that you're the one in control, and you're also aware that other people are trying to make you do things their way, but it's not so intense as it used to be a few days ago. And I think that there is greater scope now for you to be able to relax a little and start to enjoy the power you have of having the sun in Leo. And at the same time, the moon is now changing sign. The moon is moving from Pisces to Aries, and when the moon moves into Aries, it will make a trine aspect to the sun. I think you can already feel the fact that the moon is making a trine aspect to the sun, even if the moon is in late Pisces, because you're just feeling that things are starting to move. You're getting a greater sense of what's happening and how best to respond. And some of the confusion which I think you felt as the sun made its transition from Cancer to Leo is starting to fade, and you have a greater sense of what you're supposed to be doing and indeed what you want to do. Though, Leo, it's important that you are open-minded. Leo, all things being equal, is probably not the most open-minded of the 12 signs. I mean, that's because Leo is a fixed sign. Leo is very sure of itself. Certainty is important for a Leo, and once you've made up your mind about things, once you've made decisions, you want to stick with it. And that can be great, but there are times like now when you've got to take into account other things. You've got to take into account complexity. You've got to take into account perhaps other people's emotions. You might want things done in a particular way, but people's feelings are strange. And as a result of their emotions, people can do things and want things that are unreasonable, that don't make any sense, but you've still got to listen to them. Yeah, it's a pain, but it's something that you do have to do. And that doesn't mean to say that you won't eventually win out. You can triumph, even when dealing with people who are very confused. But in order to triumph, you have to be prepared to listen. And you have to try to really understand things from another person's point of view. And I think that's something that you actually really can do. And that's especially the case at the beginning of the day. And I think, all day if you're in Australia and New Zealand, because, and East Asia, because the moon is making a conjunction to Neptune. Okay, the moon is making a conjunction to Neptune all day long, wherever you are, but I just think that Moon-Neptune conjunction is going to be at its maximum strength if you're further east, Asia, Australia, New Zealand. And that Moon conjunct Neptune gives you perhaps a little bit of sensitivity to make you understand that you can't expect everything to be fixed, to be written in stone. A little bit of flexibility does go a long way. And flexibility is also important in terms of your own ideas. You have a view of the world. You're perhaps guided by various political or religious, spiritual philosophies. And they may be a very important part of your life and how you understand your environment. But no philosophy is unbreakable, and you have to consider other information, and it may be information you pick up forces you to have a slight change of outlook. So it's just very important that you're not rigid. Still, the Sun is making an exact sextile to Mars. This Sun sextile Mars, it's a major aspect. Well, not least because it's exact, not least because you're a Leo. The Sun is your ruler after all, and it's exactly sextile Mars, and that means that you can actually really make things happen, and you can present yourself in a very powerful way. And this is especially the case if you're with other people. When you're with other people, you can get their attention, and if you want something to happen, it can happen. People will be in no doubt about what you want, and if you are in a conflict situation, remember I was talking about the Sun opposition Pluto, and as I said, I do think that the Sun opposition Pluto, its power is dissipating fast, but you may want to revisit a conflict. You don't have to, but you may want to. And it might be a situation where, if in the recent past you felt that you were perhaps a loser, that you didn't come off in the best way, then you can perhaps revisit a conflict and this time round make sure that you are the winner. Now, that doesn't mean a real conflict. That doesn't mean you should get yourself into a fight or an argument. But if your victory in the past had been a little bit ambiguous and you might have thought, well, maybe actually you lost out, then there may be a way to just continue the struggle just a little bit longer. So maybe it's all about you getting in the last word. Maybe you haven't got the last word in yet, but today you can get in the last word, and then you will be fairly confident that you are right. But, you're a Leo. Don't be too obsessed with being right. In some areas, you may not be right. And even if everyone says you're right, it doesn't mean that you are right. You have to have some self-reflection there, and to consider the ways in which you might be wrong. And that does require humility. We do have a situation, sometimes we have situations in our life where we are really stubborn and we absolutely insisted that we were right. We refused to compromise and we got our way. And when we look back on it and we think, yeah, we got our way, but maybe we were misusing our power. Maybe we shouldn't have been right, and we perhaps need to have a little bit of sympathy for the other person. And so that's perhaps what you need to have as well. it's not just about being right and wrong. It's about accepting other people as human beings and trying to look at things from their perspective, and and consider how our victory might have been someone else's pain. So a bit of awareness would go a long way. Now, one other thing I should mention is that Mercury is now absolutely, completely at the end of Leo. I mean, it's been great that you've had Mercury in Leo, but Mercury is about to leave Leo. And it might be a time when you are forced to reconsider things. So, yes, you are clever. And when Mercury leaves Leo, as it is about to do, that means more thinking. That might make you even more clever, because Mercury is going into Virgo, a sign which it rules. But Mercury going into Virgo may be about self-analysis. When you start to look at yourself again, you look at what you're doing, and you perhaps realize that you haven't got everything right, especially when it comes to money, I think. But that realization is a good thing. It allows you to change things a little. So if you haven't been adopting the right approach in a financial sense, you'll be able to make some important changes. And then, by the way, Mercury, yes, it leaves Leo. In fact, it leaves Leo this afternoon and this evening if you're in the Americas. In fact, if you're in the UK, it leaves Leo just before midnight. But it does actually come back to Leo, so don't worry. You haven't lost Leo forever. Sorry, you haven't lost Mercury forever. Mercury is going to go retrograde, and Mercury will be coming back to Leo. So it's might be a sense there also, if we look at Mercury leaving Leo, that you may be about to lose something. And you might be upset that you've lost something. You might feel that you've lost an opportunity. You could have that feeling like today or tomorrow. Perhaps you had a chance to say something to someone, or you had a chance to apply for something, and it's gone. But don't worry, if you feel you've lost an opportunity, it'll be coming back, I think, quite soon. I mean, just let me be more precise. See, so what happens is that Mercury leaves Leo, enters Virgo on the 25th of July, and then on the 15th of August, Mercury is back in Leo. So 2 or 3 weeks' time, Leo's coming back. So don't worry. If you think you're losing something, then I think in most cases, or there's a good chance that you will get it back. That doesn't mean it will automatically come back to you. You might have to make a bit of an effort, but it's not too late, I don't think. Virgo. Mercury is on the absolute brink of changing sign. Mercury is your ruler. And because Mercury is on the brink of changing sign, maybe, Virgo, you shouldn't feel that you absolutely have to do anything today. Because when you've got a sign change, it can be like a moment of indecision. You're sort of halfway through the door. You're not in one room, you're not in another room, you're just on the border. And so when you're in this transitional period, it would be, I think, unwise to make decisions, because you haven't got all the facts and you don't know what's going to be happening in the immediate future, but you perhaps have to wait, perhaps until tomorrow, before you really understand what's going on. But maybe actually you should wait longer, because what's happening at the moment with Mercury is that Mercury is slowing down. in preparation for going retrograde. So Mercury's, yes, it moves from Leo into Virgo late today. Mercury moves into Virgo, may go into Virgo tomorrow, but having done that, it's still slowing down, and so things are not going to be as fast as you'd imagined. And having slowed down, of course, it goes retrograde. And in fact, on August the 15th, it leaves Virgo and goes back into Leo. So perhaps you should just accept what's going on with Mercury, and it may actually be that there are certain decisions which should be put on hold until Mercury makes its final entry into Virgo. So this is its first entry into Virgo. Mercury is moving into Virgo today, tomorrow. Mercury goes through Virgo for a bit, then it turns retrograde. So to give you an idea about how this works, so Mercury turns retrograde around the 5th of August, then in Virgo, then on the 15th of August, it goes into Leo, then at the end of August, it goes direct, and Mercury doesn't actually go back into Virgo for its final time until the 9th of September, or about then. So maybe there are certain decisions, particularly the important decisions, that should be left alone. It's still the summer, certainly if you're in the northern hemisphere. Well, if you're obviously in the southern hemisphere, it's the winter, but between now and September the 9th, it just may be that certain things need to be put on ice. You can wait. You might feel that you know what needs to be done. You might feel that you're ready to make a decision, but that might not be the case. And you just need to follow Mercury through. And then at the beginning of September, you will have all the facts in front of you, and then you will be able to make a clear decision. Aside from that, the moon is leaving Pisces. I think in many respects it's a good thing that the moon is leaving Pisces. The moon today is making a conjunction to Neptune, and moon conjunct Neptune is just a reminder that some things just are really difficult to work out. Certain people are difficult to work out. You can try your hardest, but you still don't know what's going on. As a Virgo, you want things to be clear. It's true that surface appearances can be important. You want to be able to understand things straight away. But with with the moon making a conjunction to Pisces, making a conjunction to Neptune, it is difficult. And then the moon moves into Aries. It moves out of Pisces. And so when a moon moves into Aries, things start to become clearer. And you're able to sort of get in touch with your own feelings, and your feelings are going to be able, sort of tell you what's going on, and you don't have to, worry so much perhaps about other people's feelings getting in your way. What are your feelings? What are other people's feelings? It's perhaps all getting a bit mixed up at the moment. And I do think that moon going into Aries will, in a way, give you greater clarity, and at the same time will make it easier for you to assert yourself, to be very clear what you like, what you don't like, what you want, what you don't want. And I think you'll get more respect once the moon moves into Aries. Now, the moon could move into Aries today. Certainly if you're in the Americas, you will feel moon moving into Aries. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, it will be tomorrow. So it does depend a bit on time zone. But overall, Virgo, you are becoming stronger and more aware of your likes and dislikes. But at the same time, I'm not convinced that now is a good time for making decisions. And in certain cases, it may be that you should wait until early September when Mercury makes its final entry into your sign. Libra, you are, I think, in something of a hurry. You are unusually impatient for a Libra. I mean, Librans have a certain reputation for being patient. I think that you understand the social dynamics of what's happening around you, and you understand also that people need time. They need time to work out what's happening, and they can't make decisions straight away, and you have to perhaps wait for people. That may be part of the Libran experience, but not right now. I think at the moment, Libra, you want clarity, and there are certain things that you are quite impatient about, and you want it all to happen now. And if things are not happening right now, you could find yourself being disruptive. You may not see yourself as being a disruptor, but today you could be a disruptor. You could do things which cause everyone to just stop at what they're doing and to have to reconsider everything, and at the same time you're able to push things. You can push people. You're perhaps almost trying to push people to see how far you can push them. You may not even realize you're doing it, because you're looking for an event. You're looking for a reaction. And it may be like you've got some huge concrete block in front of you. You want to remove this concrete block. You can't move it just by pushing it out of the way. So you want to do something more dramatic. You want to blow it up. That might be how it feels. And you then have to consider whether such an approach is actually appropriate. Too much force can damage the person exerting the force. So how much force do you actually want to use? So that is really something you have to consider. You also should consider the possibility that if you want something done, the best approach might be to be relatively subtle, to actually understand the dynamics of something. Everything has got its weak point. Everyone has got a weak point. And if you want to save yourself a lot of trouble, it might be a good idea to understand what that weak point is. And that's perhaps where your skills as a Libran come in. Librans do spend a lot of time watching people behave. They're very aware of social dynamics. And it just may be that the quickest and most efficient way of getting something done is to work around someone's weak points. It may take longer than by just blowing things up, but the results will, I think, be certainly more long-lasting, and they will be less traumatic. In fact, consider the possibility, Libra, that it could be possible to get huge things done, to massively increase your power without anyone noticing what's happening. That could be an approach. It requires some thought and it requires some subtlety, but I do think it's something you really can do. And the subtlety is also important in terms of how you understand your ambitions. Ambitions are important, and maybe that's all part of it. You just may feel that if you don't get things done now, you're going to miss your chance. I think you would be absolutely wrong to think that is not true at all. And you have to take the time to just listen to people's emotions. And in terms of work, if you happen to be working, if you've got a career that's important to you, just listen. Just be ready to just soak up the vibes, work out what the emotional dynamics are. And once you understand the emotional dynamics, you will be in a good position. You'll be in a position to really make things happen. And at the same time, don't ignore other people and other people's power. I mean, I know you're not ignoring other people's power, but I think there's a certain tendency to see it in a negative sense. But I don't think you should see it in a negative sense, because Sun is making a sextile aspect to Mars. And with the Sun making a sextile aspect to Mars, yes, there are powerful and dynamic people around you. And these powerful and dynamic people don't represent any threat to you whatsoever. You might feel they represent a threat, but actually they don't. And if you've got people around you who are more powerful and more dynamic than you, then maybe you should see that as a blessing, because this raises the possibility of getting help and support and cooperation. And maybe what you have to do is create a situation where you can actually benefit from someone else's power. You can leverage someone else's power to help you in terms of achieving what you want to do, and that would be a supreme act of Libran manipulation, and I'm sure you can do it. I'm sure you can handle it. It's natural. Librans are great manipulators, and if you can be manipulative today, but in a way that no one is damaged, it's just identifying what you want, and perhaps you want for the rest of the world, just identifying all of that, and then just seeing how you can use the human material around you to achieve your ambitions. But in the process, don't be impatient. It doesn't all have to be done tomorrow or the day after. Just have a reasonable time frame there. Scorpio. Scorpio, you are perhaps at the moment not particularly cuddly. I say that because you are quite reserved and you don't really want to get too close to anyone. And there may be a sense that, that distance is important to you. And so other people might regard you as being a bit standoffish. I think that's okay. I mean, it depends on the situation, but, as a Scorpio, your independence is important to you. You don't always want to be close to people. And I just think that it's just important that you respect your own way of being right now. So if you're not really in the mood for getting really close to people, then perhaps be clear about it, and perhaps avoid situations where closeness may be expected of you, or where people might infringe your boundaries. It's you that matters, and so do what you can to avoid difficult emotional situations. And I think that way you'll be making it easier for yourself, and I think you'll be making it easier for other people as well. And at the same time, Scorpio, you probably want to consider what your priorities are, because the most important aspect today is a sextile aspect between the Sun and Mars. So, the Sun is moving through Leo. Sun is very strong in Leo. And it's all about you and your ambitions, what you want to achieve in Leo. Sextile Mars, and that's about you being able to really be very assertive, being absolutely clear what you want. And so ideally today you would probably try to accomplish a great deal. Try to pack in as much as possible today, because you do have a lot of energy, but it's also energy that's very well focused in that sort of Scorpio way. When Scorpio wants something, they can just focus everything they've got onto its achievement. And I think you're really going to be helped by that. So Scorpio, really don't underestimate yourself and put yourself first. And I don't think it's really a day for being a team player. You know, I've already said that one-to-one relationships, particularly close one-to-one relationships of an emotional nature, should probably be avoided. You're not going to be in the mood. That's one thing. But being involved with other people, you know, in a team or whatever, it's just not going to work, because you have your own way of doing things, and that's the way you want it. Now, while all this is going on, it's important that you do look after yourself. You know, the moon is making a conjunction to Neptune, and with the moon making a conjunction to Neptune, okay, this moon conjunct Neptune is not going to be quite so strong if, for example, you are in the Americas or in Western Europe, but I still think that all Scorpios are going to be feeling this conjunction between the moon and Neptune. And with this conjunction between the moon and Neptune, there may be certain things that undermine you. Things happening that you don't fully understand, and I suppose they could be quite exhausting. Now, that might actually be just a good reason why you need to keep a distance from other people, however much you like them or love them. Because if you don't keep a distance, you may actually find yourself being a bit overwhelmed on a psychological and emotional level, because you're having to sort of resist this pressure from the outside world, and that's all a bit exhausting. And other people's energy, other people's emotions just could undermine you. And so, yeah, that is a good reason why you need to keep your distance, because by keeping your distance today, I think you're actually protecting yourself, and you are protecting your own health, and your own health matters. And as you, of all people, know, the way you feel physically and psychologically just can be impacted by the human environment. And right now, Scorpio, you want a human environment that is as simple as possible. Simple, straightforward. It's something you understand. If there's areas of confusion, grey areas, fuzzy boundaries, then you are going to be undermined. So I know Scorpios have a certain reputation for being control freaks. Of course, it's an unfair reputation, but I do think today is a day when you really do need to be in control. Sagittarius. There's a lot of fire at the moment, and you know that is good, because we've got the Sun, Venus, Mercury in Leo, plus we've got the moon in Aries. Well, we've got the moon in Aries, certainly if you're in the Americas. So potentially we've got a time where we've got four planets in fire signs. We've got Moon, Sun, Venus, Mercury. Now that situation is not going to last so very long, because Mercury, yes, Mercury is in Leo, it's a fire sign, but Mercury is about to leave Leo and move into Virgo. So what you're looking for, Sagittarius, is just that moment that moment where everything just comes together, where you don't have to ask questions anymore. Everything is just clear. And when that moment arrives, you need to be ready to act. I mean, it's not a situation where you're going to miss your chance forever, but still, it would be just good to be able to take advantage of the moment. And I think every moment matters. So Sagittarius, today, just be aware of the way things are changing around you. And always ask yourself, where is the scope for action? And when the moment for action arrives, I think you're just going to know it. And you'll just know what needs to be done. And I think that you will be, you'll be very clear about it. And that is, that could be very impressive. But you do have to make sure that you are 100% sober all day long. And I said this yesterday, but I say it again today. Don't do anything that can undermine your consciousness and awareness. So again, like yesterday, it's not a good day for drinking. You shouldn't be taking recreational drugs. You shouldn't be taking recreational drugs at all. But today in particular, you've got to be very with it. Not just to protect yourself from damage, to protect yourself from making mistakes, but also, as I was saying at the beginning of this piece on Sagittarius, you've got to be with it in order to take advantage of things coming your way. Because there is a moment where you really may feel that now is the time to act. And you want to make sure that you've got it right, that everything is in place, that you haven't made a misjudgment because your mind is fogged. So I suppose that could particularly happen if you just had a drink or whatever, but you don't want any foggy thinking. That should really be avoided. Everything has to be clear. And that way I think that you can really do something quite amazing today if you just give yourself the chance. And with this fire, moon moving into Aries, okay, moon does move into Aries today. It might move into Aries tomorrow, but from a Sagittarian perspective, moon going into Aries, moon making a trine to the sun, moon in Aries, trine the sun in Leo, that has an impact on Sagittarius, which is the other fire sign. Aries and Leo are fire signs, and of course Sagittarius is the third fire sign. So there is a lot of energy forming, and I think that you can really benefit from this energy. And when you see the moment, you can just bring things together really, really quickly. Now, one thing about relationships is that Mercury is starting to change sign. And Mercury can be an important planet for Sagittarius in terms of relationships because Mercury rules Gemini. Gemini is your opposite sign. And so Mercury might be symbolic of another person in your life. So if Mercury is about to change sign, it just may be that there are some people who are in a period of maybe transition. They're moving from one thing to another. They might be changing their minds. And they may be in the process of moving from one stage of life to another stage of life. And you could find that slightly annoying, especially if this person is very close to you, because you're looking for some kind of decision, you're looking for some kind of decisiveness. And you have to give people time to work out what's going on. It's not going to be immediate. And indeed, you may find that between now and early September, some of the important people in your life are actually all over the place. And this is connected with Mercury, because Mercury is about to move into Virgo, but Mercury is slowing down. Mercury goes retrograde in Virgo. It then goes back into Leo. Then it goes direct, and then it finally goes back into Virgo one more time, and then that happens beginning of September. So in terms of relationships, and particularly the important relationships in your life, I think it's important to be really patient and to understand that it may just take a long time, until the early autumn even, before people are ready to make commitments and to make decisions. Capricorn, you are in a stage where you feel that it's time to make sure that everything is clear. You don't want any ambiguity. That's something you really don't want. And I think as far as you're concerned, the more you interact, the more you're out there, engaging with the world, engaging with other people, the more scope there is for just being confused and for losing your sense of grounding. I mean, you're not going to lose your sense of grounding. Capricorns never lose their sense of grounding, but it's just at the moment it's just quite important to you. The moon it makes a conjunction to Neptune, very close to the Aries point today, and that conjunction to Neptune may not impact you directly, but it will still be a reminder that nothing is clear. Maybe the reminder will come from another person's behavior, another person's reactions. You'll see how they behave, and this will perhaps be a reminder that you live in an uncertain and unstable world. And so you might then be encouraged to take steps to make sure that everything is sorted out and everything is in order, and that things are done on your terms. And I think that is going to be very important, that you are in control, and things have to be done on your terms. If they're done on other people's terms, then that's just not going to work, and you are not going to be happy about that. Now, with the moon moving into Aries, whether it happens today or tomorrow, it's a time when Capricorn's probably going to want to focus more energy on their home environment, on the places where they feel comfortable. And in terms of your family, if that's relevant, your family may be looking to you for guidance. Even if they're not looking for you for guidance, I think you can give them guidance. You can tell them the way things are, the way things should be, and you can give some very clear, even perhaps brutal advice about what should be done. And I think if you get the balance right, then I think that advice will hit home and will be followed. Of course, you don't want to make people feel bad. You don't want to criticize members of your family or just tell them what to do without coming up with any reason. But if you use your sensitivity, which I think you can, because there's a conjunction between the moon and Neptune, even once the moon goes into Aries, it's still conjunct Neptune, even though Neptune is in Pisces, a different sign. I think with your sensitivity, you can get through to members of your family, and I think they will listen to you. So now might actually be a chance to talk to your relatives, even if you're talking to relatives who you might have fallen out with recently, or maybe you've fallen out with them a long time ago, but now might be a good time to get back in touch. But overall, in a familial and home setting, you are powerful and charismatic, and that's where you're in control. And if you change that setting, you go for somewhere else, you go somewhere you're not familiar with, you lose your power, and that's not something what Capricorn wants to do. So focus on your strengths and focus where you can be most useful. And I think right now you can be most useful when you are on familiar ground. Aquarius. Aquarius, you are perhaps aware, perhaps like yesterday, that you're not the only person on the planet. And at the same time, Aquarius, you're also aware of how strong people are. And you might even look at certain people with kind of reluctant admiration. You see what someone is doing and how they're able to assert themselves. And in a way, it's quite impressive. But at the same time, you might find it a little bit intimidating. You know, we all make comparisons about ourselves and another person. How successful am I compared to this other person? How accomplished am I? How assertive am I? Are they doing a better job than me? And I think it's quite likely that you are making these comparisons. I think you've been making these comparisons perhaps for a couple of days because there has been this Sun-Pluto opposition across the main axis of your chart, with Pluto moving through Aquarius and the Sun in early Leo. And now we've got a sextile aspect between the Sun and Mars. And I would read that Sun sextile Mars as having an impact on some of the people you come into contact with. And it's a very nice aspect, that Sun sextile Mars. And I think that you're able to see people's strengths. It's very clear to you, and you may even admire another person's strength. But I don't think it's a situation where you should feel jealous or intimidated, because having strong, effective people around you is a good thing. I don't think that they're going to use this strength against you. You might think they are, but I think in most cases that would be your imagination. I think that people are generous with their power, and I think in many cases that you can actually benefit from another person's power. So, ask yourself, what are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to do at the moment? And where are you failing? Because if you think you're failing, then you need to address the problem. And perhaps the best way of addressing the problem is to ask someone for help. And I think powerful people are ready to offer you assistance. And at the same time, over the next day or two, you're going to be able to communicate your needs very effectively. That is because the moon is moving into Aries. Aries is a fire sign. It's a sign that is very communicative from an Aquarian perspective. So if there's something you want or you need, or you feel there's a lack in your life, then you're able to communicate this lack, and someone's ready to listen. So this means if you're in a relationship, for example, close, permanent relationship maybe, then you're able to express yourself very well. And yes, it's true, the other person may be set in their ways, they may be a little bit stubborn, but just because they're set in their ways and they're stubborn doesn't mean they're not prepared to listen, and they're not prepared to, I won't say compromise, but at least to understand what you want and perhaps meet you halfway. So in relationships, it's possible that, all things being equal, you are at the moment the weaker partner. But that shouldn't bother you, because I think the other person's strength could work to your benefit rather than work against you. Pisces. Well, I suppose one thing we've got today is we've got a moon. The moon's conjunct Neptune, and the moon is conjunct Neptune in Pisces, which is of course your sign. So the moon conjunct Neptune in Pisces can be seen as a difficult conjunction for most people, but for you, I don't think so. I think the moon conjunct Neptune is a sort of energy that you're pretty familiar with. You're a Pisces, you're an emotional sign, you understand that nothing is straightforward, but there's always ambiguity. So if there is ambiguity today, especially earlier in the day, especially if you're in East Asia or Australia or New Zealand, then make the most of this ambiguity. It's perhaps an ambiguity that you can actually benefit from. Because if other people are confused and they don't quite know what to do or what to think, maybe you're the one that can step in and create clarity. Because ambiguity and confusion, it's your world. You're a Pisces. And so when people are in your world and not really understanding your world, you can almost be a guide. You can help people get through it all. And so I think that could be extremely useful. And some people really are confused. Mercury is making a quincunx to Neptune. So Mercury, of course, rules Virgo, which is your opposite sign. And Mercury quincunx Neptune, to my mind, represents a person who is usually quite in control. They usually understand what's happening. But with this quincunx to Neptune, they don't. There's something bothering them. So, again, you're someone who can provide clarity. You can work out what is bothering them. That Neptune in Pisces, creating clouds of confusion. And you can work out what's bothering them, and you can provide a good solution. So perhaps Pisces, you have a certain responsibility here to sort of guide people through the swamp. I don't know, you kind of think that people are trying to cross a marsh. I mean, not literally a marsh, but some foggy, marshy swamp. You take a wrong step and you're in quicksand, but you're the one who can guide people through. So I think Pisces, you can be actually very useful. Now, this moon conjunct Neptune, it's a fast-moving aspect. It doesn't last forever. The moon will go into Aries at some stage. And certainly if you're a Pisces in the Americas, you will feel the moon going into Aries this morning. If you're in the UK, for example, or Europe, it'll be later this afternoon. But as the moon goes into Aries, the emphasis does change. Things are less confusing. People are clearer. And at the same time, you become aware that there are things that need to be sorted out. So perhaps at the beginning of the day, it was like other people being in a bit of a fog, and you perhaps being the guide. And of course it will be all day long if you're in Australia or New Zealand. But as the day comes to an end, the situation might change. You perhaps realize where in the past you have been uncertain, you have taken things for granted, and having made that realization, you're in a position where you want to fix things quickly. And I think you can fix things quickly. And I'm especially thinking about money and organization, because we've got the moon in Aries, a very financially orientated sign from a Piscean view, and the moon makes a trine to the sun, and that moon trine sun is not exciting, But it's exciting perhaps for other signs, but not for Pisces. For Pisces, it's not a particularly exciting sign, but it does allow you to get things together. It allows you to organize things. It allows you to focus on money and financial organization. And if there's been something that's been hanging in the air and it's been unclear financially, and it's may have been hanging in the air for weeks, even months, you can sort it out quickly and you can bring it under control. So that would be a good way of handling things. And finally, just a reminder that Mercury is about to change sign. Mercury is about to move into Virgo. This sign change happens this afternoon if you're in the Americas, happens very late in the night, just before midnight if you're in the UK. I didn't really want to talk too much about Mercury moving into Virgo until tomorrow, but just a reminder that with Mercury moving into Virgo, this might be a time, Pisces, when someone close to you is about to change, and they're going to change probably in quite a good sense. They're going to become more organized, and they're going to, by and large, be in a stronger position. Mercury is going to be in Virgo. It's going to still be on Regulus. So there is someone out there who shouldn't be underestimated, but I'll talk more about that tomorrow. Okay, that's it. Those are my forecasts for the 12 signs, and I now want to look at today from the perspective of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Thursday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was number 55, abundance. So this hexagram, abundance, is about the high point of civilization, supposedly, when things are at their absolute peak. The Wilhelm translation says of abundance something like, "Be not sad, be like the sun at midday." So what it means by that is that the sun peaks at midday. That's where it is at its absolute highest point above the horizon. After midday, inevitably, the sun starts to set. It starts to move towards the western horizon. So there is the idea here that nothing lasts forever. But still, we have to take what we've got, and we are at a point of peak, and we really do need to just make the most of it. And the question is, how do we make the most of it? We could just say, well, everything's fine. We'll just enjoy ourselves. We'll just make the most of it. And, might not even feel we have to make the most of it. We'll just watch. But that's not the right approach. We have to take advantage of what is on offer. And it does seem that what is on offer is other people. And we've got two moving lines. And the bottom line moves and the fourth line from the bottom moves. And both those lines are about relationships, about how we relate to other people, how we can attract to ourselves the right person. So it's all about finding the connection with someone who can help us make the absolute most of the times in which we're living. And I think that it is a union of equals. It's nothing hierarchical. It's about you and someone else. You've got different talents. Perhaps one is a thinker, the other is the actor. And I suppose this reminds us that there is this aspect today between the sun in the Sun in Leo and the Mars in Gemini, and issues of acting and thinking are very much part of that Sun-Mars sextile. So who is the actor, who is the thinker? But you can bring that person in and you can connect with this person. And so it's also about finding a complement, which is, of course, acting and thinking. Finding someone who isn't exactly like you, but who can offer the things that you haven't got. So in the first instance, that is what this hexagram abundance is actually about. It's quite low profile, it's quite understated, and this hexagram, it moves to actually the same hexagram that we had yesterday in the second position, and that was modesty. So we see modesty again. So the fact that modesty comes up 2 days in a row as the final hexagram, I think that is important. Modesty is about a lack of adornment. It's about not showing off. It's about just being who we are, and certainly not boasting. And it's interesting that we've had modesty coming up twice, 2 days in a row, as the Sun has moved into Leo. So with the Sun moving into Leo, there is a temptation to boast. There's a temptation to want attention and appreciation. But here we have modesty. It's saying we've got to resist the temptation. If we want to really make the most of the world in which we're living, and any advantages may not last forever. It is abundance. It is the midday sun. If we want to really use the times in which we're living, then we can't show off, because if we show off too much, then we're going to put people off. And it is all about getting support and help. That's what's happening today. And if we're really into ourselves, then people are going to be put off and we're going to be alone. So showing some humility, not trying to be someone we're not, is the way forward. And it's going to allow us to attract the right attention and, yes, to be abundant. And there is so much around that we can take advantage of right now. Remembering that first hexagram is abundant. Something is sort of hitting its peak, and we just don't want to spoil it by showing off. But we won't, because modesty is the way forward. Let me now turn to the subject of Elon Musk. I've looked at Elon Musk's chart before, and it is an interesting chart, because when I first looked at Elon Musk's chart, there was no time of birth. But then his time of birth became available. So now we've got the full Elon Musk chart. So yes, sure, we want to consider why Elon Musk is so successful, but we're also trying to consider Elon Musk in terms of his current issues, the fact that he feels he's lost his son, that he feels that he is having to take a stand against the woke mind virus. Now, in describing Elon Musk and the woke mind virus, of course, we all have our own opinions. This is a somewhat dangerous topic to be talking about. So I'm going to try to be as objective as I can in talking about it. But you never know what I'm going to come up with. So let's start off by looking at Elon Musk's chart. So here is Elon Musk's horoscope. So he was born June the 28th, 1971, 7:30 a.m. in Pretoria, South Africa. And, he is, I don't know, I forget, is he the richest person in the world, or one of the richest people in the world, and he's a Cancerian. And he's just a reminder that for some bizarre reason, Cancerians can be extremely successful. You know, when you think about the two most successful Cancerians who've ever lived, okay, both of them had early deaths, relatively early deaths, but who were very successful, were, of course, Julius Caesar, who was a Cancerian, and I believe, traditionally, Alexander the Great was a Cancerian. And so here's Elon Musk as a Cancerian. And his chart did not make a great deal of sense to me when I didn't have a time of birth, but now I've got a time of birth, I think it does make some sense. You can see his strengths. He has got Mercury rising. I mean, that is a really nice Mercury, even though it is sort of combust. It's quite close to the sun, but it's not too close to the sun. And Mercury is on Sirius. It's on the dog star. I think that sort of gives a certain amount of prominence. And Mercury is in mutual reception to the moon. I think that's really important. Mercury is in Cancer, the sign of the moon, and the moon is in Virgo, the sign of Mercury. So moon sextile Mercury gives a lot of flexibility, it gives a lot of intelligence, and I think with his Sun and Mercury in Cancer and Cancer rising, that does give him a certain sensitivity, because it's a water sign, to what's going on in the world. He's aware of trends. You know, when I first looked at his chart, I did suggest that Elon Musk may not be a great innovator. I mean, he has a reputation for being an innovator, but he may not be as much as an innovator as some people claim. Rather, he's picking up on trends. He knows what people want. He knows where people are going. And that surely has helped him in his business life. And, you know, he was involved in, well, certainly, obviously, he's involved in Tesla and SpaceX, and he kind of knows. He knows what's going to happen next, but not in a fiery way. You know, fire is about intuition, just making instant connections. Water is more about just feeling where things are going. And so that is his Sun, Mercury, and the Sun, Mercury, and Ascendant all in Cancer. And of course, with Mercury mutual reception to the Moon, does give him intelligence, and also moon sextile Mercury. I know it's a wide sextile Mercury. Normally I wouldn't use a 6-degree orb for a sextile, but it is applying, and those two planets, Moon and Mercury, are in mutual reception. So I think that does put him in quite a strong position. So I think we can see perhaps his strengths there. But there are other things going on. Okay, we can look at Uranus. Uranus is sort of square the ascendant. He's got Sun square Uranus. He's got Uranus sort of square his Sun Mercury midpoint. So there is something disruptive about him, and he likes to be disruptive. And look at his Chiron. His Chiron is exactly square his ascendant. And as I repeatedly say about Chiron, you know, Chiron is a maverick, and I think we have to say it's a maverick, because we have to respect what the discoverer of Chiron said about this planet. He said it was a maverick because it has a elliptical orbit. It is a maverick planet, and that is Elon Musk. He tries to be the maverick. He makes a special effort to be a maverick, to say things, to tweet things, to really cause shock. You know, suddenly announcing he's into Dogecoin, for example. I don't know if you remember that. Was it in 2021? And caused Dogecoin to go up, I don't know how many times, tens of times. It was, if you're into crypto. But he likes to say things which are disruptive, and he likes to be a disruptor. So I think that Elon Musk chart is a perfect example of Chiron as being the maverick. You can also see it as a wound, but perhaps we'll be looking at that later. And the Chiron opposition Uranus. So I think the main features of that chart are pretty clear, but there are some other things going on here. And he's got Saturn opposition Neptune. Now, Saturn opposition Neptune it's quite a collective aspect, and it is about fear. You want to, it's Neptune and Sagittarius, you want to sort of let go, be part of something bigger than himself. That's Neptune and Sagittarius. I suppose that's the only planet in a fire sign, his Neptune and Sagittarius. So at some collective level, he's, I suppose, part of the Neptune and Sagittarius generation, who, I suppose, experienced the internet in their 20s, I suppose. And of course, he was into computers at a very early age, Neptune and Sagittarius. But Saturn is trying to ground it. But Neptune and Sagittarius is also something generational. It's something going on collectively that he's afraid of. That Saturn is saying, no, this is not acceptable. And maybe at some level, this woke mind virus that he was talking about is reflective of that Saturn opposition Neptune. I don't think he was just talking about it just for the sake of it, just to grab people's attention. I think looking at that interview with Jordan Peterson, I think that this is something he is very concerned about. And I don't think that we should just dismiss the concept of woke mind virus. As far as he's concerned, there is a woke mind virus, that it's a wokeness, a particular way of viewing the world, which is affecting a lot of people, and it appears to be have quite a collective nature. And of course, with the woke mind virus, assuming it exists, it's very difficult to resist the woke mind virus. If you say that the woke mind, if you try to criticize the woke mind virus, you can be cancelled, can't you? That's the way it works. So it's kind of interesting that Elon Musk was having this interview, this conversation with Jordan Peterson. So looking at Jordan Peterson's chart, I haven't looked at his chart before. I find Jordan Peterson's chart a little bit difficult. I mean, he's born on June the 12th. He's born 2 weeks after me. Why aren't I like Jordan Peterson? Why can't I be a public intellectual? But that's always that thought, isn't it? He has Saturn. To see, he has Saturn square Neptune. I've got Saturn square Neptune. But it's interesting that Elon Musk has Saturn opposition Neptune in his chart. A pretty close opposition between Saturn and Neptune. And likewise, Jordan Peterson has got Saturn square Neptune. And he perhaps has an awareness of collective forces, which he is perhaps concerned about, and he's even perhaps angry about. And I suppose you can see perhaps why he got into psychology, because Jordan Peterson has his Mars at 10 degrees Taurus. You see, my Mars is at 0 degrees Taurus, so I wasn't able to really benefit from that Saturn-Neptune square. So his Mars Saturn on that, so that Mars opposition Saturn Neptune is, well, it's good that he was able to benefit from that. I think that perhaps this is an example of someone being able to use Mars square Saturn, Mars opposition Neptune. In fact, you've got a grand cross. his ability to use his Mars and use, I think a lot of other people, without the opportunity, with that Mars opposition Neptune, square Saturn, square North Node, they might have got into crime or drug abuse. It might have been very self-destructive, but for him, perhaps he dealt with it by getting involved in psychology. And this is an example, I think, of Jordan Peterson's chart of, if you've got something really negative in your chart, you have to find a way of honoring it. And if you're able to find a way of honoring it through luck or design, it can make all the difference. I understand. I don't know much about Jordan Peterson. I believe he's had his own issues, his own psychological issues. I don't think things have been entirely smooth for him. But still, this is an example of someone taking a bad chart and being able to harness it. I suppose he got interested in psychology. He gave it his all, and it worked for him. And so it was like he was honoring the Mars opposition Neptune. He was honoring the Mars square Saturn. And when you honor the things in your chart, they start working for you. And I suppose another thing about Jordan Peterson is that his moon is in Libra. That moon in Libra is quite useful, even though it is in a 6. I suppose moon in the 6 is about the health professions, and he's a clinical psychologist. But the moon is in mutual reception to Venus. So he's got Venus on the IC. I've got Venus on the IC, but my Venus is not in mutual reception to the moon. So his Venus is in Cancer, the sign of the moon, and moon is in Libra, the sign of Venus. So he's got moon-Venus mutual reception. I suppose from a clinical perspective, that gives him certain skills. It gives him a certain ability, for example, to interview whether they be patients or people like Elon Musk. So those are a few points about Jordan Peterson's chart. Now, how Jordan Peterson and Elon Musk relate. So we've got Elon Musk in the middle, and then we've got Jordan Peterson on the outer wheel. So Elon Musk has got his Venus at 19 degrees Gemini, and so Jordan Peterson has got his Sun at 20 degrees Gemini. So I think that is a real connection between the two of them. I think that's nice. I don't really want to emphasize it too much. I don't want to spend much more time on this. Jordan Peterson's Pluto is at 7 degrees Virgo, which is conjunct Elon Musk's moon at 8 degrees Virgo. So there could be something quite transformative as perhaps Jordan Peterson I know that Elon Musk, I don't think, is a client of Jordan Peterson. Maybe he is, I don't know. But there is something transformative about Jordan Peterson's moon conjunct Jordan Peterson's Pluto conjunct Elon Musk's moon. Now, what I want to talk about is what is happening to Elon Musk at the moment, and what happened in terms of his former son. So I looked on the internet, and I only found one source for the birthday of Xavier Musk, but I did a search for the name of his twin, and I got the same birthday. So I'm fairly confident that Xavier Musk was born on April the 15th, 2004. So this is the former son. I'm calling him Xavier Musk because in this chart, because I'm looking at him as what he was before April 2022. So this is the son. I don't know anything about him. Haven't researched the matter. The sun has This moon in Pisces, we don't know where exactly the moon is, but he's got moon conjunct Uranus, moon in Pisces, opposition Jupiter. There is a certain emotional excessiveness there, perhaps exaggeration. That's one thing that we perhaps notice. Also, he's got Mercury in Aries conjunct the Sun, so that's a fairly combust Mercury. It may be difficult for him to be objective. This is Sun Mercury conjunction. Who is it? Antony Blinken, I think, has got a Sun Mercury conjunction in Aries. Antony Blinken is the Secretary of State, who is, of course, from terms of US foreign policy, is a real disaster. Maybe getting even more disastrous as he has more power now that Biden is fading. But that Sun can block Mercury. Mercury is retrograde, so was Xavier Musk able to be entirely objective about what was going on? And maybe he just got caught up with moon opposition Jupiter. But that Mercury is in mutual reception to Mars. He's got Mars in Gemini, in the sign of Mercury. Mercury in Aries, the sign in Mars. So he's got Mercury-Mars mutual reception. So Mercury-Mars can be very verbal, can be quite verbally aggressive, verbally assertive, and perhaps making this grand gesture about cutting himself off from his father and changing his name to Vivian Jenna Wilson. So that's perhaps how the one way in which the Mercury the Mercury mutual reception Mars is working. And as far as sexuality is concerned, I found it interesting that he's got a Venus-Mars conjunction. Okay, quite a wide Venus-Mars conjunction, but it's Venus-Mars in Gemini, and I suppose you could say, well, Gemini is a two-bodied sign. So from a sexual perspective, Venus-Mars can go in different ways, and the principle of male sexuality, Mars, is close to the principle of female sexuality, Venus. So those two planets are related to each other. There's a conjunction there, and the midpoint of that Venus-Mars conjunction is around 13 Gemini. So Mercury is semi-square his Venus-Mars midpoint. So Mercury on a Venus-Mars midpoint might be someone who is thinking a lot about sex, ideas about sex. It's something that gets a lot of his attention. So he gets a lot of his attention, and I suppose you could say, as perhaps Elon Musk might say, he goes to a Californian school. I think he went to a school in California. Ideas about sex, playing with ideas about sex and sexuality, and comes to some conclusions and sticks with those conclusions. I mean, that might be one way it was working. So how does Xavier Musk's chart, again, I'm losing his name before she changed her name, how does it relate to Elon Musk's horoscope? So here's Elon Musk's chart. We do have a time for Elon Musk, and so we put Elon Musk in the middle, and we'll put Xavier Musk on the outer wheel. And we can see this chart in two ways. Yes, it is the connection between two individuals, how these two individuals get on with each other. It's also what was happening to Elon Musk when his son was born. What was it like April the 15th, 2004? It's an important day. He's I don't know if he had children before. I don't quite know about the history of it, but it must have been an important time for him. And indeed, it was it was an important time for him because, there is Elon Musk's moon at 8 Virgo. And Jupiter, he had Jupiter conjunct his sun. Jupiter was conjunct his moon as his sun, as the twins were being born. So that's a nice aspect. Okay, it's probably not as nice as it would be if, say, Jupiter was in Cancer, though. Jupiter is in Virgo, and he has moon in Virgo. So that could be that he had ideas about what the sun was, what the sun should do, what the sun should be. That's possible. But still, Jupiter conjunct the moon is nice. It suggests happiness. And look at Neptune. Elon Musk has his North Node at 15.7 Aquarius. Neptune was at 15.7 Aquarius. That's a true node, by the way. So Neptune was exactly on his true node when his son was born. So it seems to have been quite an important moment for Elon Musk. His North Node, the way he should be going, in Aquarius, in the 8th house, the mysteries of the world, the emotional depths, and Neptune is allowing him to see things that go beyond the immediate situation. So I think that is interesting. Plus, Elon Musk has his midheaven at 28 Aries. Mercury is conjunct his midheaven. So this is about his direction, his path, where he's supposed to be going. Perhaps him as a father, Mercury on the midheaven. This is what he had. So there are some strong connections here between Elon Musk and the timing of the birth of his son. But then we also have to see it as a connection between two people. And there perhaps we have to start to see things in a slightly different way. So Xavier Musk's Saturn is conjunct Elon Musk's sun. That is kind of not so nice. Something about Xavier Musk would Saturnize his son. There is a great sense of limitation. I suppose there's also a sense of disappointment there with that Saturn conjunct the sun. And one wonders how that Jupiter conjunct the moon. I suppose the sun has not just... There was a moon-Jupiter opposition at the time of the birth, which was on Elon Musk's moon. So moon opposition moon. So Elon Musk has moon in Virgo. Moon in Virgo has a clear way about the way things should be done. It's moon in Virgo. It's an earth sign. It's clear. But then moon is in Pisces. That represents a confusion and an uncertainty which perhaps undermines that moon. And so it is a bit unsettling there. This is not how the moon in Virgo likes things to be. And I suppose critics of Elon Musk would say, well, he has a fundamentally traditional way of looking at things, and his son is challenging him. And you could even say that with Neptune in Aquarius. Neptune in Aquarius, perhaps you could say, well, Neptune in Aquarius is about, well, you've got to accept that things are changing. Neptune in Aquarius, all things can change. We have to look at different identities, and there's nothing wrong with being trans. This is the way it is. I mean, this is the future. And North Node, this is the way you should be going, Elon. You should be embracing diversity. North Node conjunct Neptune, that would be what it's all about. That is the challenge. I mean, at least that is how you might look at this chart if you were I don't know, a progressive astrologer. I'm not claiming to be a progressive astrologer, though. Now, the Mercury on, what about the Mercury on the midheaven? The midheaven for Elon is his direction, where he should be putting his energy. So Mercury is about the sun, how the sun communicates. It's on his midheaven. Maybe Elon Musk has a sense of purpose that comes from the sun. So I think that's all a possibility. So there are some certainly interesting connections between Elon Musk and his son. But then we have to consider Elon Musk and what was happening in 2022. So it seems to me that in 2022, Xavier Musk turned 18. If I got his date right, he turned 18 on April the 15th. On April the 15th, 2022. So a few days later, he handed in his papers to change his gender and I think to change his name as well. Now, that was an application. It didn't actually the actual changeover did not happen, I think, maybe until the following Friday. But somehow this moment of handing in his papers on April the 18th, widely reported in the news, is perhaps a symbolic moment. I suppose you could say it's Xavier Musk making it clear who he is, who he's not, and making a transition to being Vivian Jenna Wilson. As I said, I understand, but the legal transition would have been later. But I think there's something symbolic about handing in the papers just after he's 18. So that's the horoscope of you could say this is the horoscope of Vivian Jenna Wilson. I mean, we can argue maybe you should say that you should wait until the formal legal changeover, but this is just the application. And still, it would have been a day that would have been potentially quite traumatic for Elon Musk. This is the son rejecting his father, and indeed the son rejecting his gender. So what was actually going on when he handed in those papers? I mean, it's not a great chart, is it? You've got the moon in Scorpio. I don't know exactly what time, but the moon is in late Scorpio. Okay, it's making a trine to Jupiter. I suppose you could say that the moon is moon in Scorpio, making a trine to Neptune, making a trine to Jupiter, as those papers were handed in. So it's very watery. It's going with the flow. Moon trine Neptune, moon trine Jupiter. This is the changeover. And as far as how this hits Elon Musk, I mean, that's the key point, because perhaps this is the genesis of what's happening now. He is making this vow to destroy the woke mind virus. So looking at, we'll put Elon Musk in the middle, this date, the changeover date. So what are the transits? Well, one thing you might notice is that there's the moon, and we had Elon's moon as at 8:15 Virgo. Black moon Lilith was at 8:47 Gemini. So Black moon Lilith was exactly square Elon's moon. Black moon Lilith was also square the Venus-Mars midpoint. So the Venus-Mars midpoint, Venus and Mars are about 12 degrees apart, so 6 degrees, so the midpoint is around 8 degrees Pisces. So we had Black moon Lilith square the Venus-Mars midpoint. And that Black moon Lilith square the Venus-Mars midpoint was exactly hitting Elon's moon at 8 degrees 15 Virgo. So how would Elon Musk have perceived that? I'm not saying this is the way it is, but how would he have perceived that? One epithet of Lilith is, not epithet, but is someone who steals children by night. And so here is Elon Musk saying that his son is dead. And so that's how he perceives it. You can criticize it, but we're looking about his subjective perception. His son is dead. And certainly the gender of the child is dead. At least that's how it's being perceived. But the son is dead. And Lilith is square his moon. Lilith was square the Venus-Mars midpoint. So Lilith was this creature of the night stealing his son. At least that's how it's perceived. This creature that is part of the woke mind virus. And I think that's that really is something that we need to bear in mind. Now, I'm assuming that Elon Musk knew what was happening on April the 18th. He was handing in these papers, and look at where the moon is relative to Elon Musk's horoscope. So here is Elon Musk's fifth house cusp, 25-28 Scorpio. So the moon was just moving into his fifth house. The moon was applying to a conjunct. Elon Musk has Jupiter on the fifth house cusp. I think he's got 12 children. I mean, that kind of fits, doesn't it? Jupiter on the fifth in Scorpio. Scorpio is, I think, a sort of a fairly fertile sign. And so with moon, Jupiter on the fifth does show 12 children. It does show, or rather does show a lot of children, but he's got moon on the fifth house cusp. So you can see that children started to become a real issue for him. And you can also see the frustration. This was not an exact aspect, but at the time, Saturn was conjunct Elon Musk Mars, so this would have been, I suppose, quite a difficult time for him. And so that's his chart. Then you've got it's happened just after Xavier Musk's 18th birthday, so the sun was on Elon Musk's midheaven. So the sun on his midheaven. So here we're perhaps talking about Elon Musk and his purpose, what he feels he's supposed to be doing. And again, it is his perhaps purpose to destroy the woke mind virus. And you may be able to see this in terms of some of his actions, like taking over Twitter, buying up, this is a major thing, buying Twitter, turning it into X. He seems to have regarded perhaps Twitter as being part of the woke mind virus. The way people can get censored on Twitter for expressing their opinions. The woke mind virus doesn't like people to criticize it or to question the orthodoxy, the new orthodoxy. So that's a way of looking at it in terms of transits. There's also the question of solar arc directions, and solar arc directions. I wanted to look at the solar arc directions for when that's one set of solar arc directions. These are the solar arc directions for April the 18th, 2022, when his son handed in the papers. And because I think there's some quite interesting stuff going on here. So remember, what we do with solar arc directions is we direct things, we move the planet 1 degree for every year. So these are the solar arc directions for 22. So this would be when Elon Musk was around 51 years old. So we move everything 51 degrees. And so if we move everything 51 degrees, here is his fifth, this is really interesting. Here's his fifth house cusp, 25 degrees, 28 Scorpio. Now Elon Musk's natal Black Moon Lilith is at 6, true Black Moon Lilith is at 644 Libra. So if we direct Black Moon Lilith 51 degrees, we can direct Black Moon Lilith to 2517 Scorpio. So, in other words, Black Moon Lilith is exactly on the Placidus fifth house cusp. Fifth house cusp, of course, is about children, and so this feeling again reinforces this idea by direction that this creature of the night has stolen and killed his son. That's how he perceives it, and I think that I do really think that describes the situation. And it's not just it's not just that. He's got his whole complex. He's got Black Moon Lilith conjunct Uranus is pretty much close to the fifth house cusp, and it's Black Moon Lilith is moving to the conjunction of his Jupiter, and Jupiter is that's him having his 12 children, but that sense of how he wants to, part of how he expands. He's got Black Moon Lilith moving towards a conjunction of Jupiter. So this is potentially very upsetting for him. And so we may now be seeing, to an extent, why he's chosen now to dedicate himself to the destruction of the woke mind virus. And just before the interview with Jordan Peterson, there was a new moon. So here's a new moon, to give an idea about also what was going on in Elon Musk's chart approximately at the time. So this new moon was at 1423 Gemini. This was Cancer. So that was a new moon on July the 5th, 2024. So this new moon is right on his ascendant. This is a powerful time of rededication, of committing himself to a particular purpose. So if Elon Musk says that he wants to destroy the woke mind virus, I mean, just looking at the astrology of what's happening at the moment, I don't think we should dismiss it. I think it is something. It is something very serious. Of course, it relates to the world, but it also relates perhaps specifically to America. And it is a reminder that we are approaching, I think, a civil war. I said this yesterday, but it's a civil war that is, not, as I said, it's not about hundreds of thousands of people being killed, but it is a cultural war, a civil cultural war, and it's starting to happen now. And remember, Pluto, where's Pluto now? Pluto is at 0 degrees Aquarius. Pluto's going back into Capricorn. The United States is about to have the final Pluto return. Okay, Pluto doesn't go back exactly to the United States, his natal Pluto, but it gets pretty close. And this is the background in which we've got this election. So it's kind of not surprising, perhaps, that Elon Musk is supporting Trump, because you've got, you support one person or another. There's no space anymore for people to be in the middle. And I suppose I should finally look at the connection between Elon Musk and the USA. I mean, he is in the USA, and his his connections to the USA. I mean, his connections to the USA are powerful. So So we've got the USA's chart in the middle, and we've got Elon Musk's chart on the outer wheel. So Elon Musk's Mercury is at 14 Cancer. It's right on America's sun. So there's a natural affinity for America there. And of course, we've just had a new moon at the beginning of July at 14 Cancer. So that's kind of brought Elon Musk together, and it's also brought him together with that and with America. So about 14 Cancers showing up. And look at Elon Musk's sun. Elon Musk's sun is at 553 Cancer, and it is conjunct 5 degrees 56 Cancer. So you could say, well, that's America's Jupiter. So he has a connection with how America wants to expand. But there's another way of looking at it. So if you remember from my video yesterday, I was saying that traditionally Jupiter represents the Republican Party and Saturn represents the Democratic Party. And I explained why that made sense in terms of the United States' horoscope. I'm not going to go into that again. But if we take Jupiter in the United States' chart as a Republican Party, his sun is exactly conjunct Jupiter. So there is a natural affinity there with the Republican Party. And if also, of course, with his Mercury at 14 Cancer, that's going to be pretty close to the sun of not just the United States independence, but the convention which took place in Jackson, Michigan on July the 6th, 1854, which was the first big that was a Republican convention. Many see that as the birth of the Republican Party, which would give it its sun at approximately 14 Cancer or something like that. George Bush Jr. was born on the 6th of July, wasn't he, as well? So there is Elon Musk's connection with the Republican Party. So I think what we can see, I think, overall, how Elon Musk has been completely traumatized by what has happened to his son, thinking his son is dead. And now we can see, I think, with these horoscopes, why he has vowed to destroy the woke mind virus. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for today about the subject of Elon Musk. I hope you found that video of some interest. I tried to be as objective and unbiased as possible. And if you enjoyed this video, I would be very grateful if you were to subscribe. Assuming you're not subscribed already. If you are already subscribed or not subscribed, I would be very grateful if you would like it as well. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thank you very much for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.